Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 edition of Pint of Science in Norway. My name is Olga, and I will be your host for this exciting evening in which we are going to hear some awesome science in the relaxed atmosphere. So cheers, everyone. Oh, I really miss this sound. I wish I have it as a background now. Yeah, this laughing, drinking people, discussing the science is so fun. Yeah, but we hope, of course, for the next year. So, Pint of Science is all about enjoying and accessing science in a relaxed atmosphere. Yeah, we still have a lot of restriction because of the COVID, but we managed to organize this year event digitally again. This means that we are still in touch with the scientific discoveries of Norway. So we are now in our second day of the festival, which will be dedicated to radiation. Some people think that radiation is evil, while the other people think that it will cure cancer. Yeah, to be honest, I'm in the second part. But yeah, let's see. What do our speakers think about radiation? Will they change your opinion or open you surprising areas of using radiation in our world? Before we start, of course, this year event will not be possible without these people. So please meet the Oslo team. These people worked very hard to make this event live. So yeah, cheers for them again. Yeah, I will be cheers with you because I have nobody around me, unfortunately. And of course, cheers for our sponsors, because without them, this event would not be happened. As all science or all scientific projects, we also have some hypotheses and goals. So our goals are knowing something new, enjoying and having a lot of fun. Together with me, Julia, Daria, and three our wonderful speakers, Yulia, Theo, and Evgenia, will help me and you to actually fulfill these goals today. We also have Praveen, who is a technical master, so he will manage all the technical issues. Hopefully, we will not have anything today. So during the speaker's talk, we encourage you to ask questions, as many questions as possible. This is a great opportunity for you to really ask experts today. So Daria will manage all the questions. And after all the lectures, we also have a wonderful quiz from Julia, one of the members of our team. I really encourage you to stay till the end and join this quiz. Yeah, because it will be very interesting. The quiz will be included. So if you want, you can download it to just facilitate the participation. I think it's time to introduce the first speaker. So Julia did her PhD at the Department of Chemistry, studying molecular details of the infectious disease cholera. Successfully, she got her fellowship from the Norwegian Research Council to study antibiotic resistance at the University of Leeds in the UK. And after 2 years in England, Julia came back to start a postdoc position on Cecilia disease at Riks Hospital. You might ask, what does all of this have to do with the radiation? Yeah, but you wait, you will get all the answers very soon. So Julia, the floor is yours, so welcome.
Thank you. Let's see if I can share screen. There we go. Okay. So I work with a method called X-ray crystallography. And this means that I use X-rays and I grow crystals. And I use this method to study diseases and to see molecular details that can then help us to design drugs or also vaccines. So you've seen this picture. Wait. Sorry, there it goes. You've seen this picture a few too many times, I think. This is the coronavirus. And the point here is that viruses are very, very, very small. They are about 5,000 times smaller than the width of a human hair. So how can we actually see them? If you put the coronavirus under a light microscope, you don't actually see it. It's just gone. You can use a electron microscope, but this is basically the best that it gets. And you can't really see details. You can't see how it binds to our cells or how it makes us sick. So these red ones here are called the spike protein. This is actually how the coronavirus binds to our cells and gains access into our cells. So in order to design drugs against this disease, we need to find out how these proteins look like and also how they bind. And so we need to use something else. And this is where X-rays come in. So X-rays are actually a type of electromagnetic radiation, same as visible light. And the electromagnetic, it actually stretches all the way from radio waves, which has very long waves. And then as these waves get shorter, you get visible light. And then if they get even shorter, you have X-rays, and then in the end, gamma rays. And the thing about light microscopes is that you cannot see anything in here that is smaller than half of the wavelength of light. So in order to see tiny molecular details, you have to use something else. So for example, you can use X-rays because these have shorter wavelengths, so you can see smaller things. And that's what I use. We distinguish between two different types of X-ray technologies. You have the macroscopic X-rays, which you're used to from hospital settings. This is actually a picture of a friend of mine who tried downhill biking for the first time. It didn't go that well. But in the lab, we use something called microscopic X-rays. And these X-rays are they're focused into a tiny beam, and it's very powerful, so that we can use this to study molecules. But unfortunately, it's not enough to just shoot X-rays at proteins and then see how they look like. We actually need to enhance the signal even more. And the way we do this is to grow crystals. So crystals are actually sort of cubes where there's only one molecule that is repeated again and again. And this molecule is then placed in these very neat rows, and they form these cubes. And since all the molecules are placed in the same orientation and in these straight rows, we get these sharp edges that you've seen for crystals. The crystals you see here are actually seen through a light microscope. They are protein crystals that I grew myself. They're actually very, very small. So this big one here is around 1 millimeter. And that is, unfortunately, protein crystals just don't grow big, as you can see with minerals or salt crystals. But it's enough when we're working with these very thin X-ray beams. So my PhD was on the disease cholera. And now I'll just show you how I've used X-ray crystallography to study cholera. Cholera is a diarrheal disease. And when you get sick from cholera, this comes from the cholera bacterium. And if you ingest contaminated water or food, the bacterium will then go down to your intestine, where it will start to produce the cholera toxin, which is here in purple. And the cholera toxin binds to our cells in the intestine, and then they go inside your cells. And in there, they manipulate the cells into draining all the fluid from your body and releasing it into the intestine. And that's how you get this extreme watery diarrhea. And if you don't get treatment for this, you could actually die within a few days. So it's a pretty intense disease. Obviously, it's not a problem for us in countries where you have proper sanitation systems, but it is still a problem in areas, for example, after natural disasters or in refugee camps, for example, where you don't have access to clean water and proper sewage systems. So here is the cholera toxin again, and it actually binds to a molecule that we have on our intestinal cells. And that is how it gains access into our cells. So our idea here was to make a barrier between the toxin and our cells, so that toxin can't enter our cells. And we found this molecule here, which is very similar to the actual biological receptor. So we think that this molecule could bind to the same spot and then prevent the toxin from binding to our cells, so you don't get sick. So this is me in the lab a few years ago, where I'm producing the cholera toxin, purifying it, mixing it with this molecule here, and then I grow crystals. So crystals are these tiny ones here. And then I pick these, freeze them in liquid nitrogen, which is minus 196 degrees, pretty cold. And then we transport these to a X-ray source. And in this case, we want X-rays, which are very, very powerful. And the best ones, I would say, are at a synchrotron. So this is the synchrotron in Grenoble in France, where I've been 12 times. And I would say the 12th time was just as cool as the first time. It's a very large building which is shaped as a circle. And this one here is actually a car road going over it. And the electrons are going around in a circle in here. So we can see it in a more schematic way. So the electrons go here, and then at certain points, they release X-rays. Then they have harnessed these X-rays by building this little hutch here with a shutter. So what we can do, we can place the X-ray, the crystal, where the X-rays will come. And then we leave the hutch, close the door, and press play. And then the crystal gets irradiated by this very powerful X-ray beam. And then we'll get these images out, which unfortunately doesn't work exactly like an X-ray microscope, but we can use computer power to generate 3D models of how the protein inside the crystal looks like. And this is an example of that. This is actually the data that we get out after some processing. And it shows us where all the atoms inside of the crystal are. So the blue part is the cholera toxin, or the purple part here. And then the molecule that I showed you before is in green. And then we can look at this in 3D. We can turn it around. And then we see that there are actually 5 molecules binding to the cholera toxin here. If you look at it in a different way, we can see that it actually binds into this little groove here, which is luckily the same spots that we know the toxin is binding to our cells. So if you have this molecule here, it can then bind to the cholera toxin and prevent it from binding to our cells. And in that way, it's a type of drug. The good thing about making drugs like this is that it acts on the toxin and not on the bacterium, which means we won't get a problem with antibiotic resistance. If we manage to make this into a pill, we won't have a problem with cold chain delivery, which is an issue, for example, with the coronavirus vaccine, that it has to be kept cold at all times. Also, if it's a pill, we don't have to deal with injections, so you don't need trained personnel or clean needles, for example. So this project hasn't, it's not finished yet. I unfortunately had to move on, but hopefully they will go further with this and do some clinical trials so that it can be made into a drug, so that if you're in an endemic area, you can take a pill to prevent cholera, or you can give this drug to people who are in a bad situation, like after an earthquake or floods, for example, which could put people at risk of cholera. So that's that story. And looping back to the coronavirus, here is the spike protein again, those red dots. And this is actually X-ray crystallographic structures mixed with some cryo-EM structures, which is a similar method. And using these methods, we can see how the spike protein changes shape and binds to our molecules that we have in our lungs. And by looking at this, you can then, for example, design drugs that can inhibit this binding or other things. It's also where the vaccine, where the antibodies from the vaccine will bind to. So this here is our human receptor called ACE2. This is made by a former colleague of mine. In addition, you can use X-ray crystallography to map the different mutations. So most of these coronavirus mutations are on the spike protein. So by using X-ray crystallography, you can see where they specifically are and what effects they can have on the binding to our cells. So I hope I've convinced you that it's a very useful method that can be used in all sorts of different diseases. I've been involved in, cholera and cancer and tuberculosis, antibiotic resistance, and now celiac disease. So it's a very useful thing. So thanks for listening to me. And the cholera toxin research is done in the group of Ute Krengel, and right now I'm in the Solli group at the Department of Immunology, looking at molecular details of celiac disease. And thank you.
Well, now it's time for questions. Yes, thank you for the great presentation. I think everyone was very interested to hear how it works. And we have several questions from the chat, and the first one is from Alex. And she asked, what is the best, coolest crystal you've grown?
Yeah, so the ones that I showed in the beginning, they're very nice, but they're kind of lame because they're all lysozyme crystals, which is kind of the protein that crystallizes very easily. So in that sense, it's kind of cheating. I've had some pretty cool ones that was cholera toxin, because they weren't actually straight. So it was straight on one side and then it was bent, which is very unusual. So that one's cool. And then I had one that was completely dried up. So we thought it would just not be usable. But then I managed to bring it out, and it gave me a really nice data set or results. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next questions, can you as a scientist just apply to work at the ESRF easily, or it is hard to get in?
To work there, yeah. So ESRF was the synchrotron that I showed at Grenoble. There are a bunch of jobs there, actually, mostly as beamline scientists, for example, where you help scientists do their work. It sounds cool. I think you need to have some sort of IT knowledge, programming and such. So I haven't applied to any of that. I'm also not sure about moving to France. But it is a really beautiful place, though. Grenoble, really nice. What was there anything else to that question? It was if you can work there or if
No, it's just how it hard to
want
get
to
in.
use it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
to use it is you just need to be a part of a conglomeration. So, for example, in Norway, we have something called PX Norway, which coordinates all the trips to the synchrotron in France. So you would have to contact one of those scientists, or contact me, and I'll put you in. Let you know who you should contact.
Okay, thank you. I hope we will answer it for this. So next questions from Tibalt. Do you use molecular modeling in your workflow or to identify the most promising compositions?
Yeah, you probably know what crystallographers think about modeling. Usually no. There are other groups who use modeling. So modeling is when you just predict where a molecule will bind instead of actually checking. Quite often these predictions are wrong. Nowadays it's getting better and better, so they have better and better algorithms. So I think in the future it will be used a lot more. Right now we usually don't, but of course if somebody else has done it for you, you will use that to sort of see if it makes sense, and then prove that it doesn't bind to the same spot. Usually.
And, next one also, best predicting biological activity or the increase your chance or diffractive crystals.
Is that also about molecular modeling? Either best predicting, best diffracting crystals? No, I think that has to do more that you purify. Yeah, so for example, right now I'm growing crystals on an antibody involved in celiac disease and the gluten peptide. And what I found out was that I had to purify the complex. So I had to first bind it and then purify it some more, and only then did I get crystals. So I don't think modeling would help really, but of course there are different opinions on this. Yeah,
sure. We have a new question from the UV. How long does it take to crystallize a protein?
So it depends on. So usually, if you have a new protein that you haven't worked with before, you have to try a lot of different things. So that could take a while, maybe 2 months of sort of trials, and then you will hopefully find a condition where it works, and then those crystals themselves usually grow in like a week or two. So the ones they have now are, they grew in a week. It's most common. I've heard of people having crystals that grow in one day, but it takes from like a new protein. As long as you're not unlucky, it shouldn't take more than half a year. But of course, you might have a protein that just won't crystallize, which I've also had.
Wow. We have more questions from Maria. It sounds great that you can lower the risk of antibiotic resistance by tracking the fluorotoxin rather than the bacteria with your research. But what will happen to the bacteria and themselves then? And additional, would you just wait for the potential immune systems to tackle them?
That's a cool question. So the drug would only work on the toxin, so the bacteria will still be there. But I think, so eventually your own body will tackle them, but also they would just sort of flush themselves out. Cholera spreads by diarrhea, right? So if you don't get diarrhea, it's less likely that it will spread to somebody else. And also, it would sort of it wouldn't be dangerous anymore. We have a lot of bacteria in our intestine. So, of course, I guess these might cause some inflammation. So maybe it would still be good to have antibiotics as sort of a backup. Like we do use that as well, but then obviously you would probably use a lot less, because one issue is that if you take antibiotics against something in your intestine, it will sort of be flushed out before it can work. So I think a dual combination would probably be good here. But it's cool to discuss.
Okay, we have no more questions in our chat, but maybe we will waiting for. Okay.
Yeah. So I have one question. Can I? Yeah?
Yeah.
So first of all, I just think that we need to give a lot of applause, like virtual, digital, but a lot of applause to you. Yeah, that was awesome, really. That was very cool. So my question is that, so you're growing your crystals for 2 weeks, yeah? And then you irradiate them, or using this X-ray crystal? And what you can do with the crystals after that? Can you do this analysis, or you just throw them, or what happens with the crystals afterwards?
Yeah, so the X-rays are pretty powerful, so they actually destroy them. So since X-rays is a type of ionizing radiation, you get some electrons being sort of pushed off. So the crystal sort of loses its shape. You can't really see it, but it loses that very ordered structure. So after it's been used, you just have to throw it away, bin it. You can, of course, use it for other things. So sometimes you could dissolve it and then check that you have the protein that you thought. You can still get the protein out, but it will be damaged. So that's why you sometimes grow a lot of different, or a lot of the same crystal. So you can shoot several ones, because then you don't get this radiation damage that you get from shooting them with X-rays.
Yeah,
especially powerful ones.
Is it expensive to use this? Like, how much does it cost, like, to use one, like, to irradiate one?
It's free.
Yeah, I know, but it's just like if you calculate the cost, is it expensive, or it's kind of
like, I don't really know how much it costs to run the synchrotron, right? So we I think Norway pays. Yeah, so Norway pays to like this EU program probably, which is why we as scientists don't pay to go there. But I'm sure like the power bill must be pretty high to keep that electron ring running and all those scientists working there. So yeah, I guess we should. It's sort of easy to just try a bunch of things, but of course you should maybe think about not sending crap down salt crystals. I don't know. But yeah.
Not to check everything that you grow there. Like.
Yeah, some people do that because they want to travel.
Oh yeah, I can understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Join you for the next travel to Grenoble.
So much fun. Yeah.
I would like to interrupt because we have one question from Thibaut. Your opinion regarding cryo-EM?
Yeah, so cryo-EM is this method that is sort of I mean, I wouldn't really say competing, but it's a complementary method to X-ray crystallography. You use electrons instead of X-rays. But it's been getting a lot better in recent years, and now you get almost the same detail as you do from X-rays. So no, I think it's really cool. I tried some of that as well. I made some cryo-EM grids last year, which was fun. So no, I'm pretty positive. There's no there's no anger there. I think most scientists should be able to do both if you're a structural biologist.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yes. And it's time to move on to our second speaker, yes?
Yes.
But first I will clarify that you can still write your questions in the chat, and we will answer them in YouTube. So Olga, now is your turn.
Yes.
One more.
So our second expert is Theo, who is a senior researcher at the Oslo University Hospital. And his group focuses on curing cancer with photodynamic therapy. Sounds pretty difficult. So I will just stop here and give the floor for our expert, Theo. Yeah, you're welcome. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, good. Hi.
Go.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for the nice introduction, and I'll try to share my screen because I think I might run into little difficulties here. Let's see. I'll try this one. Can you see it? Did I share it?
No, yeah.
Yes.
Now we can see it.
Now it is, yes, okay. So, okay. My topic today is about proton dynamic therapy. It's a new therapy that we developed here at OS and the University of Oslo, and it comes from known therapy, which is called photodynamic therapy. But to explain you about all this, we need to go back to vampires. So these are creatures of the night that go out only in the night. They feast on blood. They have pale skin. They have fangs, like protruding teeth, and canine teeth, and they have a disfigured face. They also have an aversion to garlic, from what we know from the movies. Then, if you combine this with some of the symptoms of porphyria, which is extreme sensitivity to sunlight, treatment with heme injections, pale skin protruding molars, and facial disfiguration. And then garlic enhances the symptoms. Now we know why, because when garlic breaks down, it does two things. It can lower the blood pressure and it can increase heme oxygenation, which clips the heme. So, are we talking about the same thing here? The undead or unusually red? So Draculas might have been porphyria patients. That's an interesting theory which lingers about. But what we are interested in about porphyria is how this photosensitive, how does porphyria work? It works because of the uncontrolled accumulation of dyes of photosensitive compounds in the skin, which come from the heme cycle. And you see in the heme cycle here, there are a lot of enzymes that regulate it. And if one of them is dysfunctional, then you get porphyria symptoms or different porphyria types. What I would like to draw your attention is the penultimate compound before heme, which is called PP9. This is a natural photosensitizer, as we call it. Photosensitive substance, the ones used in PDT or photodynamic therapy. So this is one step before the heme, and if you put iron into it, then it becomes heme. So the iron stops any photosensitive reactions and stops it from being active. So photodynamic therapy, a few words about it. So you have your happy cells here, cancer cells, and then you inject them with a photosensitizer, or in the case of PP9, as we showed, you enhance it through the heme cycle. Then you wait for a little time until this spreads around and allocates within the tumor nicely, and then you apply visual light of the appropriate wavelengths, usually red, so that it can penetrate deeper in the tumors or in the tissues. Then this is absorbed by the photosensitizer, which now goes into its excited state, and then it has two options. It can either fluoresce back into the ground state, or it can cross the system to a state called triplet state, a different spin state, in which it can interact with molecular oxygen. That's because molecular oxygen is also in the same state. And then there are two types of interactions, which both lead into cytotoxic reactive oxygen species. the most important in photodynamic therapy of which is the one called singlet oxygen. And this both cause cell death. And that's how photodynamic therapy kills the cell. It's very interesting and entertaining to see that someone in 1912, Mayer Betz, tried this on himself. It was a time of hero scientists. And then he injected himself with a very primitive or initial photosensitizer called hematoporphyrin, and he went out. Fortunately for him, the first day that he went out, there was no sun. But 2 days later, he went out and there was sun, and this is what happened to him. He got severe edema, and you can see here that his right face was more exposed. And then 2 days later, the edema subsided, the swelling subsided, but he had lesions because of the cell death, because of photodynamic action. I will now give you one clinical PDT example. It's here is a tongue cancer called leukoplakia, and this is usually treated by cutting the tongue or glossectomy, which is debilitating in many ways. So we can treat it with PDT. And then that's what happens. I'm sorry about the gory image, but what happens is you get necrosis after the PDT in day 2. And 2 weeks later, the tissue starts to heal, and at the end of 5 weeks, you have a very normal tongue again. Another more tricky case. This guy here, this old chap, presented with a severe, as you can see here from the gadolinium contrast picture, a severe maxillofacial cancer. So what happened with the help of radiology, we inserted some fibers into the through needles into the tumor, and then after treatment, the face cleared up. Of course, it was a palliative treatment. So that leads me to the new development that we managed to have here at OS and UIO. And it's based on proton therapy. Proton therapy is therapy with the proton ionizing radiation. And just to, while we're on this image here, to tell you that very soon in Oslo and in Bergen, but in Oslo, we'll have a proton center right here where I am now at the Radium campus. This treatment is based on the interaction of protons with matter. And there are several interactions, as you can see here. Don't try to understand my slide. I'll guide you through it. We are mostly interested in the electronic interactions. We forget about the nuclear ones. And there are 2 of them, ionization and excitation. Ionization means that an electron, because of the Coulomb force, the attractive force of the proton, they have opposite charges. Because of the attractive force of the passing proton, then it shoots out of the atom and it goes away. So the atom or the molecule remains without one electron in an oxidized state. And excitation means that this attractive force is not as big, but is big enough to excite the electron into a higher energy state. And then what happens is you have 2 direct actions on the DNA from the ionizing radiations. The one is from ionization of water, and the other one is direct action from the protons. Both of these, they lead into breaks in the strand breaks in the DNA. So why are protons quite nice? And yeah. Okay, here I regain control. Okay, so the protons have something which is called a Bragg peak. So you follow this blue line here, the sharp one, and this Bragg peak means that we can tune the protons within the tissue so they can give a high amount of energy where we want them to. And this can be specifically therapeutic to the cancer. And also, we can have multiple of these Bragg peaks stacked one behind the other, so we can control the treatment of the whole volume of the cancer. Whereas in the case of photons, X or gamma rays, you can see that even you don't have this effect and you still get therapy after the tumor. In protons, the therapy stops at the tumor. So if we were in the hood, we would say protons stop while photons walk. So these Bragg peaks, moreover, can be by tuning the initial energy of the protons that come out of an accelerator, can be tuned into the length of the tissue. So you can see here different initial energies and different lengths into the tissue where you can have the Bragg peak. And also by using different fields, we can, and because of the Bragg peak and because we can stop the treatment, we can treat different tumors by sparing adjacent critical organelles. But let's see the concept of our proton dynamic therapy. So here we have fluorescence by light excitation. So light is the green incoming wave, which excites the electron to jump into the next orbital and then goes back to the other orbital by giving fluorescence in the red, lower wavelength. What happens in the proton excitation? The proton passes by at a very crucial distance from the atom or molecule, and then it interacts with the attractive force to the electron, which jumps into the next state and then gives out fluorescence. And let's see further our concept. So we inject the photosensitizer, then we shoot the protons with a Bragg peak at the tumor, and then we get fluorescence, but also singlet oxygen, as we said before, and then we have treatment of the tumor. I leave it for you once more to see clearly what happens. And here we go to the next. This is our experimental setup, and how we found out how we managed to provide proof of principle of this effect by measuring the fluorescence using a spectrograph and a camera. And you will see how in a minute. So first of all, with a camera, a normal camera. And this is the image that I'm showing you now, is by protons. So the protons go in and cause fluorescence in a photosensitizer, which is in a cuvette and is bombarded by the protons. Here you see the cuvette. These are different examples. The first one corresponds to the one I'm showing you here on the right. And these hot contours, these heat contours, they show the intensity of the fluorescence, with red being the highest. You can see from that if you remember the Bragg peak, the fluorescence profiles, red, green, and blue, they have the same similar profile to the Bragg peak. We went through different photosensitizers and we managed to excite them all, giving out fluorescence. And then we checked this fluorescence with light excitation. And we saw that the profiles we got from protons are exactly in red, from photons, sorry, in red. They're exactly the same with the ones from protons in black, or exactly or very similar. So we get a good match of the fluorescence. So it means that the first part of our job has been accomplished. We managed to show that we have fluorescence from the photosensitizers. Then, to show that we populate a triplet state where the singlet oxygen is formed, we need to show that we have phosphorescence from the photosensitizers. And this we managed to do by creating dry gels where there is no oxygen in. So in this case, no interaction with the oxygen. So the triplet state is long-lived, and you can see the fluorescence here. the phosphorescence here, which matches very well that of light in red. So we also have phosphorescence. The third and more crucial step was to show that we get singlet oxygen. And that we can show in two ways. The first way is direct, and this is by using a camera, which is very sensitive in the IR, and which can directly catch the luminescence given by singlet oxygen at 1270 nanometers. And with this camera, we managed to get very nice results, and then to show that we get singlet oxygen from protons. But also there is an indirect way. So we use the photosensitizer, PP9, the one that I showed you from the heme biosynthetic cycle. And this is converted by singlet oxygen into a photoproduct. And here in the red curve, you can see the actual PP9, and in the blue, in the black, you can see the photoproduct coming up. It's like a camel, which goes from a dromedary, one hump, to a Bactrian with two humps. So we saw the second hump. So now we have demonstration that we have singlet oxygen too. What to do next is to find a good photosensitizer with a high yield of singlet oxygen, and to try our concept in cells. So we gave this photosensitizer to cells before we selected the photosensitizer cercosporin, which is a phytopathogen. You can even see it on banana skin. It's the dark red spots. So this phytopathogen is very light sensitive, and it has an 80% quantum yield of singlet oxygen. So we used it, we tried PDT, of course, first on it, but then we used it with protons. And here are some representative results in two cells, both of them brain cancer cells, glioblastoma multiforme. In the gray bars, you can see the action of the ionizing radiation without photosensitizer. And in the pink bars, you can see the effect when you add cercosporin in. And you can see, for example, from here and here and here, that you have a higher effect of cell death with a photosensitizer in this cell line. And this cell line is more robust. It shows this effect at higher ionization doses. And these are the sums of our effects, which show that we had a definite proton dynamic therapy, as we call it now, effect in our cells. Finally, I would like to introduce to you my team. We don't have much time, but at least I can brainstorm you with their faces. The people on this image are the OS team, and here are the YO team, and our lovely cyclotron technicians at the UIO. And finally, I thank you for your attention. It's time for beer. I didn't have beer here at the office, so I call it tea. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. It was really impressive. And I hope many of you also feel the same like me. But we still have not questions in the chat. And I can ask few one to warm up our audience. As example, you've on the first slide, you talk about some substance which can be used for the this liquid. So is it toxically?
With the PP9?
Yeah.
No, these photosensitizers, as they're called, they're not chemically toxic. That's the beauty about them. You can give them to the patient, and they're not chemically toxic at the dose that you need to activate them by light. And then you may use a laser beam to activate the photosensitizer only at the tumor spot. So it's very selective.
Thank you. Now we see some questions in our chat.
Questions?
No, we see. Elisa, she asked about expect for glioblastoma multiforme. What type of tumors do you think could be treated with the type of therapy?
Started this with the hope that it will be used for deep-lying tumors because, as I said in the talk, I didn't specify this, and this is thank you, Elisa. Thank you for the question. I didn't specify this. So, although light has a very shallow penetration into the tissue, on the other hand, protons have quite a deep penetration into the tissue. You saw in one slide that the Bragg peak. So we hope that it can be used for all solid tumors which are deep lying.
Okay, thank you. We have one more. When will this be in the clinic?
We are in a very 3 years ago we were at the concept stage. Now we have proof of principle, and now we have to start very how do you say meticulous research to try to characterize the system, limitations, where it works, where it doesn't work, what problems it can cause, where it can be used. As I said in the slide, in 2025 now, I think, we expect to have a proton center in Oslo. Not many years after that, we would like to be in a position to announce a first-in-man trial. And from then, that point onward, we can hope to go into the clinic.
Okay, thank you. And one more for Judita. How long does such a therapy take? Which by-effect does it have?
So, how long? We haven't gone into animals yet. So that's another step that we hope to achieve very soon. It depends on the cancer, and I wouldn't say that long because radiation can only be given as fractions of highest dose. So I would say minutes. Then which side effects does it have? So by incorporating the proton dynamic effect into proton therapy, we hope to lessen the effects of the proton therapy, because proton therapy, although it's quite specific, it's still ionizing radiation. And it does damage to the DNA, which might also, apart from curing the cancer, lead to mutations and lead to other forms of cancer. So our therapy, like PDT, it doesn't target the DNA. It targets other sensitive targets within the cells. So we hope by incorporating this to reduce the side effects of proton therapy.
Okay. More questions from Elisa. Do you think there could be some crosstalk and toxicity on blood because of the heme? Could this actually be exploited for tumors which have high angiogenesis?
Yeah, again, a very nice question from Elisa. And so the heme and the production of PP9 or the heme cycle was shown for the production of PP9. Once PP9 is produced within the mitochondria, it goes out and spreads into other parts of the cell. So the heme, which goes into the blood, has already been converted. It doesn't have to do anything, and it's not photodynamically or proton dynamically active. It's muted, as we say. PP9 is the active one, so it's before the heme. So that's what we're trying to exploit. We're hoping, the protodynamic part, it will refer to tumors which have high angiogenesis, because to have the proton dynamic part, we need to have oxygen there. Yes, and also the ionizing radiation. But we have some tricks up our sleeves, which we hope to prove for hypoxic tumors as well.
Okay, thank you. I check now. No questions more from the chat, but maybe. Oh, one more question from Olga.
Olga.
Yes. Yes.
Nastarovia.
Thank you. Nastarovia. Yeah.
Nastarovia.
Yes. So I think I have heard you a couple of times at the conferences, because I'm also working with radiation therapy in IRIX group. Yeah, so I actually recognize these lovely engineers from Oslo Cyclotron Laboratory very much, and I'm really inspired of this concept. I really like when people study the combination of therapies. It's either like a radiation plus something. It's very inspiring. And you have very ambitious plans. I really want to follow your animal experiments, really.
Yeah.
I'll just ask a primitive question. How you inject the photosensitizers, like locally or intravenous, or?
No. Intravenous, yes. Intravenous or intraperitoneal. There's two ways to inject them, so they have to be systemic. And then two things are happening. So there's right, for example, for an exogenous photosensitizer, then you inject in, you have an about 3-to-1 selection ratio for the tumors, due to the to their affinity with LDL, low density lipoproteins. So, but the highest selection is from local irradiation. Yes. So, but for PP9 though, for PP9, and that's amazing. You get huge selections in tumors, and that's because of the lack of some of the enzymes, especially ferrochelatase in tumors, which inserts the iron into PP9 to make it heme. So heme cannot be made, so you're left with PP9, huge amounts. In fact, in glioblastoma multiforme, as we showed some examples, you have a blood-brain barrier breach, and due to that breach, you get even higher concentrations of PP9 into the glioblastoma. Currently, PP9 is used as guidance to resection intraoperatively. So when they open up the skull to operate, they shine two kinds of light. White light for the operation, and ultraviolet light to excite the PP9. So when they see where the PP9 is, they go back with the white light and cut that part. Then they shine again. They see more PP9, they cut. So this method now has improved the life expectancy of glioblastoma patients. Not dramatically, but it has, mainly because you cannot cut as much as you want.
Yes.
In the brain.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, I wish you good luck.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to this event. It's really enjoyable. Next time I will come with a pint. This
Great.
time it was only a shot, but that was what I had available. But next time, pint.
Good.
Maybe in a pub. We can do it in a
hopefully in the pub, in the bar. Yeah, next year. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Your turn.
Yes, I think we can move to our last but not the least speaker for today, Evgenia, who is a postdoc at the Norwegian University of Life Science, where she works on improving risk communication about ionizing radiation. She has been involved in several European projects dealing with societal aspects of radiological emergencies and involvement of stakeholders in environmental remediation. The floor is yours, Evgenia. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the kind presentation, and thank you for this opportunity and invitation to present a bit of my research and others' research to you. And so now we're moving from fascinating crystals and gory images to a bit of the social sciences. Because as you have duly noted, I work with communication about a risk from ionizing radiation. I feel like I should have specified it in here. And now I don't know how to change my slides. There, sorry. So I can remember how when I was a child, I was not allowed to run under the rain without my, without an umbrella, without my head covered, because and sort of the reason that the grown-ups would give for that was that if you get your head wet from the rain, you actually you may start losing your hair. I was born in Ukraine a year after the Chernobyl accident happened. And there was little to no information available to people about what has actually happened and what does it mean for the people who live in the different areas of the country. And this information void, this vacuum, was quickly filled with all sorts of myths, really weird myths and misconceptions, just like the one that I've just told you about. We know from Chernobyl, experiences from after Chernobyl, and also experiences from other big nuclear accidents, that the psychological and societal effects or the consequences of these accidents are often much more severe than the actual direct consequences from being exposed to radiation. And here we talk about stress, anxieties, and depressions, or stigmatization of people who are coming from the affected populations, breaking richer families, and sort of societal bonds. And a lot of this is due, and it's caused by bad communication about the radiological risks. And this is why I work with this topic, because I think we should really be better at that, and we should aim at improving our communication about radiation risks. But let's start with what is the risk really? And in natural sciences, risk is really all about probabilities. So for instance, if the probability of an accident happening is low, and then the probability of that causing harm is also low, then well, we're fine, it's safe. And that's often the message that kind of that got communicated. But we don't really think about numbers in terms, when you think about risks, not in our everyday life. We don't think about numbers, when we get in a car to go somewhere. We don't think about numbers when we take yet another pint on our science festival, and we definitely don't think about it only numbers when we think about something so complex and controversial as radiation. So today I'm going to talk to you about all the different factors that we, in the social science, we try to dig deeper and understand what is actually making what is actually impacting the way we think about different risks, and specifically radiation risks, and how does that and how can that be explained, and what factors are behind. Factor 1: radiation can give you superpowers. No, I'm actually just kidding. I'm just trying to see if you're just trying to keep you awake in this afternoon hours. Here's the serious stuff. So let's start with the psychological research. And the psychologists actually back in the 80s already, they found out that every single hazard that can be has the certain characteristics, and depending of where the hazard belongs on these different characteristics, that influences on whether we think this is something that is sort of dangerous or not. And one of those and for radiation risks, so we talk about ionizing radiation risks as, for instance, result of accidents. It's characterized by its catastrophic potential. I mean, every one of us can remember, at least one one sort of accident, or perhaps recall something about the nuclear weapons. It's also characterized by being man-made. So it's something that it's a technology that we have developed, we have sort of intruded, and we've created this. And it's often controlled by others. We don't really control this type of risks in a society. The distribution of the benefits is often seen unfair in radiation risks, which means that we think that those that are getting most of benefit from it, from, for instance, industry, are not necessarily the ones who get exposed to most of the risk. It's also an unfamiliar risk. It's something that we don't really know about in our daily lives that kind of, makes it a bit iffy. And the last point here is that radiation will mostly cause delayed effects. Only very, 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 very big doses would cause any immediate effect, and most of it would might cause some effect in the future, which kind of makes us more concerned, and we're also concerned whether that can be passed over to the children. But of course, every one of these characteristics is just on one side of the scale, and then there is sort of the equivalent opposite one. For instance, for a man-made, the opposite of man-made is natural. And natural radiation is something that we are not so much concerned about, usually, because, well, it's natural, it's there, it's been there before we came, so what can we really do about it? The medical radiation used for medical purposes is another interesting example in here, because we tend to be much more positive, towards medical use of radiation, and that is because if we take, for instance, an X-ray at our dentists, at each visit, we choose to do that. So this is we're doing it voluntarily, and we also see a very direct benefit from it. We're getting better treatment and better teeth. So from psychology to more sort of pure communication research, and I think we all understand that we are impacted by all the information that we are exposed to. And boy, are we exposed to a lot of information nowadays, because the amount of information channels has been just increasing and increasing in the past decades. And it's the more channels, it just creates more platforms and gives it opens up to more opinions and more agendas, and it's getting really hard to find the source, to know which sources to trust, and which sources of information are actually reliable, and it's becoming hard to filter away misinformation, whether it's deliberate or not. Another way we are doing the information, we are learning, or we are exposed to information, is not that direct. And hi, Hulk is back. And it's about the pop culture and how radiation risks are typically presented in the movies, in the series, in the books, whatever. So I don't think that I think most of us don't think we can get superpowers from being exposed to radiation, but I do think that we can be. The way the radiation is presented in this various pieces of movies and series, it might, for instance, influence the way we think about mutations, or how we expect, how we think the mutations work, especially if we don't have the education in this. But if we don't have education in this field. And if you want a more serious example of that, there's, of course, the excellent series that was done a couple of years ago. And how many of you have actually learned most of the stuff about Chernobyl from the HBO series? We do learn from the way culture represents the different risks. So another factor here is that we're actually all different. Already in our little group, and here we can see we probably come from different countries, and we represent different cultures. And our values and our experiences will also have a lot of impact on how we think about risks. For example, what kind of culture do you come from? So do you come from a country where individualism, so the value of an individual is paid the most attention to? Or are you coming from a country where it's most important to be belonging to a group? So, it's a family in a sort of community and society are the most important things. What are your moral values? What are the moral values that are most important to you? Is it fairness, maybe? Is it equality? Is it compassion? For example, in the discussions about the nuclear waste management, the participants from the public, they often bring up this question of the responsibilities we have to the future generations, and how we shouldn't, they shouldn't be, cleaning up the mess that will live them. And that is the moral question. This has nothing to do, with the probabilities or the calculations. It's really inherently moral. And so my final point here is actually one of the really crucial ones, and that relates to, what kind of experiences have we actually had with the institutions that manage the risks? Do we trust the institution? Do we trust the different responsible institutes that are managing this risk for us? Which, you remember, in case of radiation risk, we can't really control. It's sort of, there are other entities that control it for us. So that will matter a lot. How do we see them as competent? Do we see them as having our best interest in their thoughts? Are they interested in, are they making decisions for the right reasons? What is their track record? How did they communicate and behaved before in the sort of similar situations or in crisis situations? It's a little bit, how it works in relationships, really. So, if your partner is, if your partner has gambled, all your money away back in the past, you probably wouldn't want him or her to be part of, any major decisions later on in your life. And it's sort of the same way with, with when our responsible institutions, or we feel, are perhaps, doing something that we don't really approve of. So what does all of this really means for the communication? And first of all, I hope that you now understand that how really, really complex the way we build our sort of attitudes toward risk really is. I mean, it's definitely not about numbers themselves, but there's so many different perspectives that are mixed up in here, both societal and personal and sort of interrelational. And I think the first step, that is needed, it's being, some of it is already being done. It's just sort of bringing this perspective, so the perspective of, natural and social sciences together and working together, and, so that we can represent this, so we can, represent the different views. Because it's not really about just changing the way we communicate about risks, but it also impacts on the way we should make decisions about risks, and what should be considered, what is the important issue to consider in here. Also, we need, in order to work together, as with the social sciences and natural scientists, and also those making decisions and those that, represent public and other organizations that are interested, we need to actually have a dialogue. Because communication is as much about listening as it is about talking. That's another great relationship advice to you. You're welcome. And so we need to, when we have, we need to at least understand what concerns people have, to make sure, at the minimal, that we are answering the questions that might have, and not something that we sort of imagine the question is. And sort of finally, given how important, how everything is connected, and how important all of the, sort of acts and communications are for, keeping this sort of trust going on between the organizations, different organizations, the managed risks, and also the public. It is really, I think we should really be going for sort of like communication 2.0, that would sort of base itself on, start with sort of gaining the mutual understanding, and also be based on a lot of accountability and transparency and honesty. And that is my main message for today. Thank you all. And here is the beautiful Parlemur sky from NMBU.
Thank you very much, Evgenia. It was wonderful. We still not have a questions from our chat, but maybe I can ask you to something refreshing our audience. So many people have a misconception about the radiation. Yes, some immediately react negatively to it. So what do you think, Evgenia? Does the society need to know about radiation even that is within the normal range, like natural radiation, something like this?
I think that actually would be it would be helpful to know in general what the ranges are, because I think a lot of a lot of people wouldn't know that those that are sitting in Oslo. I mean, there are some areas there that just naturally high in radiation because it's built on granite, and so are many other areas in Norway. So I think it actually would be helpful if we've talked if we talk more about this. But this is what is usually in there. But it's always more complicated than that. It's not about it's not always about numbers being low or the doses are being very low. The doses in the Fukushima after the accident in 10 years ago, they were also, they were quite low, but that wasn't what was causing in a way the outrage of people. It was more, the lack of transparency from the companies that were managing the risk. It was sort of a reaction to they've never been told this could happen, or they've always been told this couldn't happen, and they felt cheated and abandoned and lied to. And so there's a lot of these things that that are past the measurements and the levels that I think are really fascinating, because it's so goes so deep inside, and it depends on so many factors. But yes, coming back to your original question, it's helpful to talk about the different levels and put things in perspective. That's what we call it. Yes, we put things in perspective and we compare. And I know people like to use bananas and stuff.
Or maybe flights, yes, like some. Okay, and we have a question from Alex. That was really interesting. Do you have any tips for talking to friends and family about this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think I would start with finding out what is it that they find problematic. Because again, there's just so many, what is it exactly that concerns them the most? Because they might be okay with, 90% of the different issues, but there is something very specific, for instance, about cancers, and how radiation exposure can increase, the cancer rates. Maybe that's, so that, you could talk about a very specific issue. But also, of course, we always talk about, not being too technical and don't use the terminologies, and try to sort of use some helpful comparisons with the other sources of radiation that to just show if the worry is about levels.
Okay, no question more. So, but maybe go to your. Oh,
here comes Olga.
Yes, hi. Yes, I have a question. I know that not recently, but a couple of years ago, you published an article with recommendations to mass media for communication on this radiation emergencies. Do you do something like this for the companies, for example, or do companies have some regulations or rules how they supposed to, like, if they have some emergency occurred in atoms like station? Do they have any regulations how they should communicate it to public or to mass media?
So when you talk about companies, just to clarify, so when you talk about companies, you talk about sort of nuclear industry.
Yes. So do you provide some recommendations for them or only for mass media?
Oh, well, I think a lot of yes, that was a specific project we had when I started my career, when we analyzed the media. But we did recently finish one of the projects when we talked about how to communicate about uncertainties in radiation risk research. Which is sort of more general, but I think for instance, the IAEA, so International Atomic Energy Agency, they publish a lot of recommendations. They go to all the countries and all of the different industries. We don't often work directly with industries. That's we're doing research. We work a lot with the decision makers. We work closely with the nuclear regulatory authorities in the countries, or nuclear research institutes. So they do get our sort of recommendations, but. Sometimes we do science just for science as well. we don't always produce recommendations. We just want to really dig into, a very specific issue.
Yeah, I think it's very important. We shouldn't neglect risk communications for sure, because a lot of people have this wrong understanding of all these emergencies, like as you talked about Chernobyl. Yeah, I was very surprised that my friends as you said that they learn a lot from the HBO series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for your talk. Yeah, sorry.
Welcome. No, it's just since we don't have any questions, I just thought I'll just follow up on what you were saying. I mean, we are trying to promote that that the social sciences are becoming like a bigger and bigger part of whatever research projects we do in radiation protection. We've actually done a lot of work in and now all of the radiation research done in Europe has some kind of societal aspect to it. And through building these networks, we do constantly highlight how important it is to think about the societal aspects, because nobody will know how good of a work you do if your communication fails. So we do quite a lot of promotion, but not necessarily with the industry itself.
We have one question from our chat, and it's from Judita. Who could be in charge of that, and how could this communication be performed with the public? Any ideas from your side how people should be informed?
So who could be in charge of communication? Well, I think all the authorities authorities that are responsible for managing the risks are usually in charge of providing this communication, because they are the ones who have all the they have all the experts, they have all the sort of the scientific input coming into them, so they are usually in charge. And then, of course, you have the if you were talking about industries, they have their own communication departments that also do a lot of communication. How should it be performed to the public? Oh, there's lots of stuff happening now and changing, right? Because we're changing the way we are consuming information, right? Because before people would just have press releases and you just have some press conferences or just put stuff on a web page. Now it's not enough anymore, right? You need to be where people are. So if your audience is on Twitter, you need to be on Twitter. If you're if people, there's different organizations starting podcasts now, because this is what people are listening to. So you really need to adapt. There is no sort of set recipe for that, because the world is changing so fast that things just get out of date. So you need to be aware of where your audience is and who are you trying to talk to. Are you trying to talk to younger generation? Are you trying to talk to older people? And map that out and try to talk to them in their language through their channels. I don't know. Is there any radiation stuff happening on TikTok? I'm really interested. I don't know. If somebody knows, please tell me. I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm following Twitter, but not TikTok, unfortunately. That would be interesting to see.
We have more questions, and thank you, Alex. So it's about films and media. Yes. Do you think this is something Hollywood should be more mindful and of and stop doing, like with all these radiation mutations?
That is a good question. I think we should generally be very mindful about whatever we are doing, no matter what. But of course, but there's so many interests and conflicts of interest that happen in here, because they film it for that reason, because that's how it sells. It's the same with dramatic headlines in the newspapers. This is what sells. So I definitely think they should be more mindful, but I don't think we can really demand or we can really change much about it. Perhaps we can, because there are so many movements now that are trying to influence the movie industry. Yeah, I don't know how that works. But yeah, we try to work with the journalists, and that's also something. In some countries, they just say we are naive by trying to sort of say that we can build a relationship with them, we can talk to them, and if they know who they can contact if something happens, they will have a checked expert that they know speaks human language that they can go to and talk about this. So we don't have all this weird stuff that came up in our media analysis when they did it, and the journalists actually agreed with us, because this is the the way the media landscape is working, it's also so fast, and it's pushing them very much. They need to sell the newspapers, so they don't have time to be thinking about, what about the experts. But I do think the movies in general, for whatever thing, should hire proper experts as their consultants, because sometimes it's really facepalm moments.
It's true. It's true. So one more time, thank you very much for the
Welcome.
great.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, Olga, your turn.
Yeah. So we had 3 wonderful talks from our experts, and now it's time for our quiz. So Julia, please, I just hand over to you.
Yeah. Thank you for then a warm welcome also from me. Now you reached the last part of today's event, and of course also cheers, so skål, how we say here in Norway actually. Like I said, this is kind of the last part of today's event, and we thought it would be maybe nice to have a little quiz to test your knowledge on radiation. And of course, it's also helpful if you paid a little bit attention to the talk that we heard now from our great speakers, and also connected with this. Some of these questions were actually contributed to us by our speakers. So also a big thank you to the speakers for that. So then I will just start sharing my screen so we can get the quiz started. We're gonna do the quiz using Kahoot. So I don't know if all of you have used it, but to join, you need either the Kahoot app that you can download in the Game Store, or you can also join by going to the Kahoot website. And all you need is then to enter this PIN, and then you can join the quiz. So I will wait a few minutes for some of you to join. I hope all of you. And just maybe also some information. There's also going to be a prize for the winner of the quiz. It's going to be a surprise prize, but it will be connected with our Pint of Science mission, of course. And in order to claim this prize, I will also say this again at the end of the quiz. Please contact us either by email. You can write us an email to norway@pintofscience.com, or you can reach us on Facebook, where we are on Pint of Science Norway, or also on Twitter, where it's Pint of Science NO. And of course, if you don't win the quiz, you can also follow us on social media. So that's not just for the winner. See, some people are now joining. I will maybe wait a little bit longer. Maybe we get some more people. Then also just maybe some information on the quiz itself. So it's going to be multiple choice questions. And of course, if you answer the questions right, you're going to get points. But in Kahoot, it's also the faster you answer, the more points you get. So if you think that you know the answer, don't hesitate and answer as fast as possible in order to win this quiz. I don't know if there will be maybe some more people. Can wait 1 more minute. Looks like it's getting less people. Maybe some technical difficulties. Okay, maybe then I will start with the quiz. So you can see on the title, Waves of Radiation. So let's get right to the first question. Who discovered X-rays? And then there are going to be 4 options. Was it Marie Curie? In red, Wilhelm Röntgen. Blue, Nikola Tesla. Yellow, or Blaise Pascal in green. You can see always 30 seconds time to answer. So you have a little bit of time to think, but as I mentioned, the faster you answer, the better. Okay, we have actually more players than I thought. Looks like people are putting in the answer. Yes, and as you see, the right answer was Wilhelm Röntgen. And I think after each question, we also get a little scoreboard. So we see O is leading, but it's a very close race. So then let's go to the next question. This one is a true or false. red light is made up of longer wavelength and carries less energy than blue light. Is this true? Then tip blue, or false? Then you have to tip red. Yeah, hope you remember that from the talk, or maybe you also remember that from school. Okay, time is running out. Okay, but it looks like everyone is putting in their answer. Yes, and of course that's true. Oh, it was actually almost 50-50. Okay, how is the scoreboard looking? Okay, a little bit of a mixture. Marvi is now in the lead, but very close with second place. Next question: what is smaller? Is it red mark bacteria, or is it virus, which is the blue mark on the quiz? So that's a 50-50 chance for those who don't know. Good try. You can maybe also get a little bit inspired by the pictures. It looks like everyone put in their answer. Okay, and that actually everyone knew this. That's correct. It's viruses. Okay, the lead is still the same, but still people are very close. Go to the next question. How cold is liquid nitrogen? This was actually mentioned in the talk. Is it 0 degrees Celsius? That's the red. 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the blue mark. Is it minus 196 degrees Celsius, yellow? Or is it 273 degrees Kelvin, which is the green mark? So yes, quite a wide range of temperatures to choose from. Okay, everyone answered. Okay, most of you knew minus 196 degrees Celsius. Very cold. You have to watch out very much when you work with liquid nitrogen. Okay, there's a lead crystallizing out, Marvi, but still it's not decided yet. Come to the next question. What kind of radiation can be considered dangerous to human health? Is it X-rays, red mark, microwaves, blue, the yellow mark, radio waves, or green, visible light? So also maybe helps to think a little bit back to the talks from the speakers. Try to remember. Some answers are missing. Fast decisions at the end. Yes, very good. It looks like everyone answered. And that is X-rays. And most of you knew. Okay, now it's a little bit of a mixture, always taking the lead, and radioactive close behind. Okay, now we're halfway on the quiz. What kind of radiation has the most energy? Is it ultraviolet radiation, so red mark, X-rays, blue mark, tetrahertz, yellow, or if you think it's gamma ray, choose the green one. That's also maybe not so helpful, the picture this time. Again, fast answers. Time is almost out. Very good. Oh, we have even 11 answers. But yeah, most of you said gamma ray. Good. Okay, now radioactive is taking the lead. But yeah, it's interesting. Still mixing the scoreboard, all is open. Seventh question. In what order do we see the colors of the rainbow? And consider we're saying from bottom to top. Is it red, green, yellow, blue, orange, purple? And choose the red option. If you think it's purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, red, blue option. Take the yellow one if you think it's orange, yellow, blue, purple, red, green. And choose the green option if you think it's green, blue, purple, yellow, red, orange. So yeah, a lot of colors. Maybe difficult to read in time, but I hope you still manage to answer. The right answer is purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. And most of you knew. Very good. Okay, radioactive is building up a lead. getting a larger start, let's say. Okay, then let's continue. 8th question. What is proton radiotherapy? Is that an external beam radiotherapy using ionizing radiation? Then choose the red color. If you think it's radiotherapy using a radiation source placed close to the treatment area, choose blue. Choose yellow if you think it's a therapy type aiming at generating targeted changes in the DNA. And green if you think it's therapy type aiming to rescue DNA damaged cells through the use of protons. Again, very long answers. Maybe it was difficult to decide in time, but it's actually external beam radiotherapy using ionizing radiation. One of you knew, so I think there's going to be some mix, maybe. I don't know. I guess no one on the leading board got it right, but that's also all right. Let's go to the second last question. Glioblastoma multiforme is a cancer of the immune system. Then choose red. If you think it's brain, choose blue. Choose yellow if you think it's bones. And choose green if you think it's muscles. So yeah, that's a bit more medical question. It also talked about in one of our lovely talks today. Hope you're getting this one right. Yes. Most of you know it's a form of cancer of the brain. So yes. Okay, radioactive is strong in the lead now, but things can still change. So last question coming up. Cray is the unit to measure. Is it radioactivity as disintegrations per second? Choose red. Radiant flux, then you choose blue. If you think it's radiation quantity absorbed per kilo, choose yellow. And if you think it's a unit to measure pressure, choose green. So the last question. People are hesitating. Now the answers are coming in. Very good. Some answers are missing. Maybe people weren't sure. But yeah, most of you knew it's a unit to measure radiation quantity absorbed per kilo. Very good. Yes, and this was the quiz. So yeah, 3rd place, it's joules. 2nd place, yes. And the winner of today is radioactive. Very good. Applause to you. As I mentioned before, in order to claim your prize, please contact us either by email by writing us to norway@pintofscience.com or contact us on Facebook or Twitter to reach out to getting your prize. And now with this, I just want to thank you all for joining today's night and also joining for the quiz. I hope you had a good time, as much fun as we had. And with this, I will give back the word to Olga, who will now close today's event.
Yes, thank you very much for the quiz. I just think that we should have all of us here with me, all of us who made this evening come true. Yes, just waiting for a couple of seconds. Yes, we just missed Evgenia, but I guess she left already. So I would like to thank you all again. Thank you, our speakers. Thank our audience. It was very interesting. I think that, I think it was very successful, yeah? Are you agree with me? Yes. Yeah. So it's our 2nd day. So I really welcome all of you to join us tomorrow as well. And also check the other cities of Norway. They also have really nice evenings. So thank you for joining. Yeah, science will save this world, of course. And yes. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.